Says there's 14. All right. I think we are live. Nope. Now it says waiting.
Hey.
Nope. There it is. Okay. Now it's live.
It is there.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, folks. Rocco and I are going to go through his audio setup for recording Linux Spotlight and then what he's been doing in post-production, trying to mix the audio. Obviously, he has control of his side of the audio, but he has to contend with guests that maybe don't have the best audio, and then he's also using Zoom, and that introduces some complexity. And more or less, we had been talking about this for the last few weeks, where we just basically said, why don't we just get together and talk about this? And we figure, hey, why not stream it, and maybe we can learn something together and you can learn with it, or maybe just kill some time. Who knows? What do you think, Rocco?
Yep, I think we'll just kill some time. No, I don't, obviously I do audio, but I'm nowhere near an expert. And, a lot of the times when you learn things, you learn them in pieces. And sometimes you don't learn them from start to finish. So you pick up this piece here and then you miss what maybe you should be doing, but you pick up this piece back over here. And that's where I am with audio. So I know this piece and I know that piece and I know this piece, but there's so much in between that I should know probably that I don't know, that maybe sometimes it causes extra problems. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can, by talking, we can kind of connect those pieces and fix a few things.
Okay, they're saying you're a little quiet, so let me check something real quick.
I don't know. I don't think it's me. I didn't touch nothing. I didn't break it, honest.
Yeah. I probably had the volume down because the last time I was streaming, and of course now I can't get to my desktop. Because the last time I was streaming, I had 3 different channels loaded. I had Discord, Zoom, and something else, and it was too much. So I will actually be right back.
All right. This is fantastic. So, yeah. So basically what we're going to do in this is we are going to try to go through what I have set up already, maybe do an outline of what I have set up, and then go through the DaVinci Resolve setup that I have for editing, maybe touch on Fairlight and what it can do. And man, I could learn so much in DaVinci Resolve and in Fairlight. And also, we would like to continue this and kind of go through like Reaper and a few others, maybe even Jack, and try to set things up and go from there. So hopefully this would be a first of one of many streams that we'll just kind of go through all through the audio setup that we have and kind of learn together. So, yep. And if you guys have anything during this, you have any suggestions or things that, if we're talking about something and there's something that I'm missing or whatever, you guys we'll be monitoring chat to make sure that if you do have any suggestions that we look at it. And
sorry for the booping. All right. That should be better for Rocco. If I look at the meter, it looked like he was louder.
Mic check. Mic check.
We'll go with that.
Okay.
If folks want to just let us know. Okay. All right. So what is it you do now, Rocco, in terms of capturing the audio? So you're recording an episode and you have your audio on your end, obviously, and you can capture that. You're just recording it somewhere, just your local audio, and then you're mixing that in with the Zoom recording, or how are you capturing the, just what does that look like right now?
So it's changed a lot over time, but right as of this moment, I use OBS to capture the different tracks. So I capture 3 tracks, which is my mic, the desktop audio, which is pulled in from Zoom, and then both of them mixed together in one track, just in case. I don't really need that third track, but I always have it there just in case. And it's probably useless because if the recording got messed up, it would mess up both of them. But that's what I have coming out, 3 tracks. And the desktop recording is just capturing the Zoom audio out, which is just recording the guy's voice. So that's what I hear. That's how I capture the guest voice.
Okay.
And mine is directly into OBS through the mic. Some of the guests I can say, hey, can you record locally on your computer? But some of the guests I'm not going to ask that. Like I'm not going to ask Mark Shuttleworth, can you record locally for me so I can have better audio? And his audio actually wasn't that bad. For being in a kitchen, living room type setup, not having a mic near him, there was little to no background noise. And he didn't sound like he was in a little to no big open room. It was a good setup. And so I don't know exactly what he had, didn't sound like he was in a little to no big open. So then I record that file. I will take it out of there, import it into Audacity, do some EQ and compression to it, and then export it out and marry that up in DaVinci Resolve to the actual video. And then export it out and marry that up in DaVinci Resolve to the actual video. And then export it out and marry that up once in DaVinci Resolve. Once this is in the actual Resolve, and then export it out. So once tracks that are there because they are the original tracks from the original recording, and then I'll delete those audio clips and put the new ones that came out of Audacity into the video, and then I'll start the editing process.
Okay. So are you happy with the quality of the audio that comes out of Zoom? Have you ever had it not be as a result of the person's end, like their setup? Or is it always?
I think part of it is the person's setup, because some people just don't have a great setup. And I get that and I understand that. So part of it will never be fixed because some people just, they don't have a audio studio setup like we do. So that's okay. I still think that the audio could be better quality. A lot of times, and one of the biggest things with Zoom is that it, with the connection. Now that might not be able to be fixed either, but a lot of times you'll hear the person go in and out or speed up really quick to try to catch up with the video. And that's pretty frustrating, but anything that I can do to make it sound better, I'm up for. The mic quality on my end, I think, is decent, so I can get away with what my quality on my end, I think, except for decent. Past couple episodes, I can get away with had that noise in, that some audio noise in the mic itself, but that I believe I have fixed. So
Got it. Well, I wonder then, so something I was going to suggest, and this might be overkill for some people, if you were having issues with Zoom, so let's say you had someone that does have a known good audio setup on their side and you were still not happy with Zoom's quality. There are things like clean feed and other sort of point-to-point connections where you can pipe audio in a very lossless way so that it's very high quality. And so we're not going to get into that today, but if at some point you've done all this extra work to try to get the audio cleaned up and what you're limited by is Zoom itself, then maybe that's something else that we can look at in the future. It's something I want to start doing with Nate, because we use Mumble just to communicate and then we record individually on our own end. But if we had something like Clean Feed, which is truly lossless between us, then I could actually be recording both tracks simultaneously,
right,
as individual tracks, and be able to then just take it and mix it down. It's not that big of an inconvenience to have him send me his audio file, but it just would allow me to do more things on my side, because I can mix it, here, instead of having to get his audio. And like you're doing, I have to take it into Audacity and have to do some adjustments to it, some noise reduction, stuff like that, then export it out. And then I have a track to work with. Whereas if it was here, sometimes his levels are too low too. So I have to do some boosting, and stuff like that. Whereas I could control all that here and get the mix as close as possible from the start, and then have something, where I don't have to do all this extra work too. So,
Now, when
if
you say pipe it in, are you talking um, you would be piping it in from Zoom, so I would still be taking Zoom and piping it somewhere else? Or are you
well,
talking
you'd
something
actually
different?
have their audio coming through a different channel. So it would be Zoom would still be the conference. So like Nate and I are using Mumble, but we don't actually use the audio from it. We're just using it as a means of communicating.
Ah,
So Zoom would still be your the way that you're communicating like we are right now, but we could have something else set up that is actually connecting our audio in a way that is much higher fidelity.
right.
And it's probably for what you're doing with Linux Spotlight, it's probably overkill, and it's not something you could likely ask just random people. Hey, although I will say that it is browser based, so you really only need a Chromium based browser to use it.
Right.
So
Oh,
it's
so
not.
it is something that you would have to ask that person to use.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, I
So
mean, hey, for like I said, it would raise the quality of certain episodes.
yeah,
So, like, maybe I wouldn't be able to ask everybody to do that, but
right.
for a lot of the guests, I could, and they would be more than happy to probably do something like that. So,
Especially if it's easy, right?
yep.
If it's simple enough, they could just open it, start it, and just get it out of the way and not even think about it. So anyway, I'm going to do some more testing with it, and if I find a workable, easy solution, then I'll let you know.
Okay, dig it.
All right, so you've got two distinct audio tracks. You've got yours, which is already going to be pretty clean anyway, because you've got what are you doing with your audio? You don't have more. You have a mixer and your mic, or do you have like a USB audio interface? Or
So I have the SM7B going into a cloud lifter, which
mm-hmm.
then goes into the Alesis Multi-Mix 4, I think it is,
Okay,
mixer, which then connects to the computer via USB.
okay, and on the mixer itself, you just do some basic tuning. Do you
To
do
be honest
anything?
with you, dude, I don't know a whole lot about mixers as far as so I did minor tweaking with it, but I didn't do too much with it because that's a detailed process of checking and checking and checking to see if it's correct. You more or less need to do that with somebody to get it right.
Yeah, and
Otherwise,
there's
you may not know what it sounds like.
well, obviously you've set your gain and stuff
Yes.
like that.
Yep.
But in terms of EQing on the mixer, yeah, it honestly, I would rather just let it flow through and then do it after the fact, unless there's something that is just completely egregious. Like if you have a super low voice and you want to boost some of the highs, you can. That's the
Right.
convenience of a mixer. But ultimately, depending on the mixer, you might have a really good one, and obviously then you can do lots with it. But I have a really simple
Well, this
Behringer.
is a pretty simple mixer. It
Yeah.
does, and if it had stuff like X has, and where you had the noise gate, like we had talked about on Biddle and stuff, and you had the compression right into it, then I probably would spend a lot more time messing with it. But it doesn't. All it really has is EQ and pan levels. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And even then, the EQ, like I only have a dual band low and high. So
right.
it's not even like I can get very, it's not, it's an EQ in name only, pretty much. But it is helpful for having the right levels and things like
Yep.
that. Seeing the clipping lights if you have that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah. Okay. So, okay. You've got your audio's then pretty clean to begin with. And you're really probably having to spend more time on the guest audio than anything else, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you've gone through the process of cleaning it up in Audacity and doing different things. And what is it right now that you feel like you're lacking? So you said you wanted to try something like Reaper or maybe look more into the Fairlight stuff that's in DaVinci Resolve. What's making you want to change your process?
Well, the main reason is obviously the base reason is because I want better audio.
Okay.
But to narrow that down a little bit, every video that I watch, every tutorial that I watch says, every voice. Hold on, I got a crazy alert
Is
here. Um,
that the
ev-
tornadoes coming?
that's the thunderstorm warnings. So,
Okay.
But every tutorial I listen to or read or watch talks about how every voice is different, and every EQ and compression level needs to match their voice.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I want to do is I want to learn more about audio in general and editing in general, so that I know what it's supposed to sound like. So,
Yeah.
for example, this Wednesday coming's Linux Spotlight is Drew DeVore. So he's a audio editing engineer for Jupiter Broadcasting, right?
Hmm.
He's an expert at knowing how to make audio sound awesome. So he sent me his local track that he recorded, and I did my EQ boosts or whatever in Audacity. And, obviously mine is not up to the quality level that his was. And I want to know why. I want to know what he did and how he did it, so I can get that same quality.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're right. And, we have a few people. So Simon is, as you know,
Yep.
has been on Biddle, and he's an audio engineer. And, well, okay, I believe that. I'm not trying to bestow titles if that's the wrong thing, but he mixes audio, and he does recording and things like that. And I'm sure he would completely agree, as would I, that you have to find the right mic for the right person. And you have a very good mic. You have sort of the benchmark mic for spoken word. So, I mean, it's very unlikely that it's your hardware. And at this point, it's probably more just about what type of EQing are you doing, and what type of compressor, that type of stuff. And Audacity is great for, in my opinion, it's great for certain tasks in cutting audio, cleaning up audio. Some of the filters are very good, but ultimately the challenge with it is it's destructive in nature. And what I mean by that is you apply a filter and it changes the waveform. Like, the audio is now this new piece of audio. It's no
Right.
longer the underlying audio. And the way that differs from something like Reaper or any other DAW, or even Fairlight in DaVinci Resolve, is all of those effects are being applied real time to the underlying audio. And so you can apply multiple layers of effects and change them around, tweak them, and none of it is actually changing the input audio, it's changing the output audio. And the convenience of that is you can hear it in real time. So something I'll do is I'll literally take a 5-second piece of audio that I want to tune in some way, and I'll set it to just loop.
Right.
And so then I can have that looping in the background and have my filter panel open with the 3 or 4 or 5 filters that I have, be able to enable them, disable them, tweak them, and you can literally hear it in real time. Whereas in Audacity, you have to apply the effect or the filter, wait for it to complete, listen to it, undo it, redo it, undo it,
And it
redo it.
does have a preview on it, but it
It
only captures like 5 seconds of the
Yeah,
that's all. And it's like, you gotta have more than that to listen to it if it's gonna be right.
exactly. So I think that's probably the biggest advantage of not using Audacity for doing fine grain mixing and filtering and things like that. Again, Audacity for you as a utility to do things with audio files is fantastic. It's just when it comes down to really starting to try to get those fine grained filters and things like that. So yeah, so that's really what made me want to switch to something else, and that's why I went to Reaper. Although at the time I hadn't been using DaVinci Resolve, and you had said maybe I should give that a try,
Yep.
and I did, and it's pretty amazing. And one of the things that they include is Fairlight, which is their audio mixing panel, and it has a lot of the same sorts of filters and tools that a DAW would have. Now, it's not as powerful as something like Reaper, but it may be enough for you for in what you're doing. And because you're already in DaVinci Resolve, and for folks that haven't used DaVinci Resolve, the magic of it to me isn't so much that it's a really good editor, because it is. It's that It's a really good editor. It's a really good audio platform. It's a really good color mixing platform. It has every tool you could ever possibly need to produce quality video all in one package. And you can jump between those things just at a whim.
Right.
So you decide, I'm editing the video, and all of a sudden I hear something weird in the audio. Well, I'll just jump over to Fairlight and then, tweak something there, and then I'll just jump right back to the cut tool. And that's really, you don't have to go between programs. Whereas if you're doing that with Audacity or even Reaper, you're going to have to do that independently and then bring it in. So hopefully DaVinci is going to give you the answer you need. There's nothing wrong with trying and using Reaper. I think if you're curious, you might want to anyway, but ultimately it might just be the best option to use DaVinci Resolve.
I think with now I've heard different viewpoints on the Fairlight portion of DaVinci Resolve. So some people say it's good, and some people, like Ben Stone, who is another genius in audio, doesn't really care for that. But he's looking at it from a professional standpoint, and he may be doing things that I wouldn't ever attempt to do, and that may be the cause of him saying that. So I would like to learn more about the Fairlight. I did, like, when I started using DaVinci Resolve, I did look into Fairlight. But it was more or less, I was going between both Audacity and Fairlight, and I tried to do, I think I did 1 or 2 episodes with Fairlight, and I wasn't quite happy with the way the sound came out because, obviously I was new to it and I don't know all about it, and time is another issue to be learning all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I was familiar with Audacity, so I just stuck with it. But I really would like to open it up and try to learn different things, especially if it's going to save me time.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, and that's why I gave the disclaimer, right? It is not a digital audio workstation. It's very much geared toward video production. Would you use it to produce the highest quality audio in a video? I don't know. What I know is that there's a lot of familiarity to it, because when you use a compressor or a noise gate or, any of these, an equalizer, like any of this sort of standard tool set that you're going to see in a DAW, they have most of that in there. A lot of the same filters. There's a de-esser. There's, all of the stuff that you would normally want to do in a DAW is there. Now, then maybe it doesn't give enough granularity for someone that's doing, real audio production, and they're just used to a higher, flexibility and capability. I don't know, but from the 3 or 4 videos I've edited in DaVinci Resolve, just playing around with it, it seems to be completely capable. And so, yeah, I mean, we might as well just take a look and see. Let's take a look at chat. There's been there's a wall of chat that we've been ignoring.
Yes, we're supposed to have 2 people looking at chat.
Yeah.
Too busy conversating.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of it was about Windows 10 sounds, blasphemy.
So
what was a Windows 10 sound?
Yeah,
it was from when I was, yes, this is being, my main desktop right now has Windows on it for reasons I don't want to get into at the moment, but it's what's actually streaming. Go ahead.
Johan says that when I speak, there's distortion. I don't know if that's still or if was when we started.
I listened, I turned
still, or
no, it sounds fine when I listen to it. It might have been earlier. All right, Tony's here. Hey, Tony, how are you? Paul, Farron, Dan Simmons. Shouldn't you be working? Alex, what's going on? So yeah, Simon. In case you guys don't know, Simon, like I said, is he does a lot with audio. So
does Silent Robot.
Yes, that's true. So I've warned both of them. Well, I've warned Simon, at least. I didn't get a chance to say it to Silent, that I am not an audio expert. I know what I know through basically figuring it out for myself. So if anything in here makes you want to scream and throw things, just let us know. Hey, Joe, how are you? All right. So Simon was saying that the setup you have is a good choice for a lot of people. I agree. It's a great mic. And there you go. Okay. I don't know. Did you see anything else in there?
Nah, pretty much.
All right.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. So let's jump in and take a look at DaVinci Resolve then.
All right.
Rocco's going to share his screen.
I am going to share my screen, and this is I do have a profile in here of Linux Spotlight. And this is the current episode that I'm editing. So this is not Wednesday's episode because that's already edited, but this will be for the following week.
Okay.
And yeah, this is the main setup. So where do you want to start?
Well, I don't think we need to really go through a rundown of DaVinci Resolve, although maybe it's worth just showing how at the bottom you've got all of these different options for, you can, the first one is managing your...
First one is media. So this is where
Right.
you can collect all of your media. You can drag and drop files into here. You can import them. You can make bins out of them, so you can separate out all your trailers from your transitions to your tracks. And if you hover over them and go through them, it'll
scrub.
actually give you a preview of it. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
The cut page is something that I don't personally use in my workflow because just the way I edit with one track basically the whole time. I don't need to switch between multiple tracks. If I had multiple video tracks in here, I might use the edit page because it seems to be a little bit faster to edit. But it basically gives you the whole timeline of the whole video on it, and obviously your preview window as well. And you can specifically cut and move tracks around, do transitions from here.
Yeah, for people. So the top section is the entire timeline, so you can very quickly. The whole point of this cut panel is that you can see the entire length of the video on the top, and then at the bottom you see just a small portion of it, and you're actually performing the functions at the bottom, but you keep the context of where you are at the top. And that's, so I use this because it's really easy and efficient to look at the little waveform down here in the audio and see where there's very large gaps. So a lot of times I'll make a video where I've been interrupted, or like I need to just cut certain sections, and this workflow for me is very quick, but it doesn't give you any of the non-linear video editor kind of controls. That's the next panel over, and I'm guessing that's the one you use the most.
Yes. So I usually use this panel, which is the edit page.
Okay.
And I have everything I need all in one spot. I have the timeline that I'm working on right now. I have the view panel here. I have all of the video transitions that I can just drag and drop to different tracks. I have my media bin here where I can add new ones if I need to. But like I said, for me specifically, especially with Linux Spotlight, it's just one long track that I'm just cutting. So I don't need to do a whole lot of extra stuff. I also have the audio tracks. So you guys shouldn't be able to hear this audio.
No,
but
we can't.
as you can see, the audio levels go up. And you can tell if it's too loud or not too loud. You can make adjustments to the volume here, and you also have access to the EQ and some of the features you would use in Fairlight over here. So, like if we click on this, it'll give us a the window where we can adjust the pan. Same thing with the EQ. And I will say that like it does take a little bit to come up when you're doing this stuff. But as far as the different little panels, if you're not in Fairlight, but yeah, you can turn off the EQ from here. You can do whatever you need to do for specific whatever you have done in Fairlight as far as EQ or compression or anything like that. You can turn it off from here. And then up here you have the inspector where you can granularly change each individual thing. So if you click on a clip, it'll tell you the volume on it. You can change that. Videos, it'll give you the zoom. That's basically what I use. The next one over would be Fusion, and I don't know if you've ever used the Fusion part of it. I don't, because that's more for
Yeah.
transitions.
Yeah, I do. So the use case for me would be titles, and some of the cool stuff there is that you can actually make titles that can like do motion tracking and like all kinds of really cool stuff. And it's all these nodes, and it's very complicated.
It's very complicated, dude.
but also very powerful. So
very powerful, dude.
Yeah.
I watched a 15-minute video where the guy showed you how to do a specific transition, one of them really cool, modern looking zoom, swirl, flip transitions,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're
yeah.
awesome. But it was like, take this and move this around and nodes here, and oh my gosh, it was like so detailed.
Yeah.
So I don't do much in here. Color is the next tab, and that allows you to put different color grades on it, and do black and white if you want to. And it's a very powerful thing as well, but that's also really complicated, and you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which is not something that I have learned to do yet. The last tab is the deliver tab, which is where you would render it out. So you would name your file over here, and you would hit add to render queue, and then it would pop up over here, and you would hit the start render process.
Now, one of the things I wanted to point out, and I mentioned this earlier, but I just wanted to mention it again. As Rocco is navigating through, each of these panels remembers where he is in his process. So wherever the timeline is.
Right.
And so that's why I was saying you could be in edit and be in whatever spot or whatever you're doing in edit and realize, I'd really like to look at the color for this, or I'd like to do something with the audio, and you switch to that panel and you're just there. You're
at the same exact spot in the timeline.
Yeah.
You were in the other panel. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, to me, having to do things separately in other programs, it adds so much time and effort. And if nothing else, DaVinci Resolve, I think, nails it with that.
So the tab that I skipped over is the Fairlight tab, which is probably the one that we want to talk about and kind of discuss. So you have your track, and I honestly don't do a whole lot in Fairlight, except for in the beginning, I will go in and check out the levels in Fairlight to make sure that they're okay. Other than that, I don't do a whole lot, because what I usually do is whatever I have put on here, say the multiband compressor or the de-esser, I reuse the same project over for each Linux Spotlight, which means that is always going to be there. That stays the same. So the same de-esser that I put on the last project is the same de-esser as goes on this one. So I don't have to worry about it in that way.
Gotcha.
But anyway, you will see, if I turn on the volume, you'll see the levels go up, and you have each individual tracks, and you have the main track, and you have all of your control right in this area. Now, you can hit the little plus sign, and it'll give you all kinds of different Fairlight options to change or to add. And the one thing I noticed in Linux, as far as DaVinci Resolve is concerned, is kind of a bug, is this whole thing where you see there's a menu here, but it won't show up. So you have to actually, like, the VST menu is not showing up right at this moment. Let's put it that way, as you can see.
Do you have the VST plugins installed?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And if you have see how Fairlight's not showing up right now?
Okay.
So it's just a little, and if you hover over it, I don't know what it is with it.
Oh, there they are. Okay.
That's like a little tiny bug with DaVinci Resolve. But anyway, these are the options that you can put into any track. And when you add an option, like say Echo, it will pop up the box, and it will give you.
We're not seeing the pop-ups. We only see the window, the main window.
Oh, so
you may have to share your desktop. Yeah.
All right. So let me share the desktop. You can't see my desktop, man. I can't share it.
Put it on another desktop. It's Linux, man. You got more than one desktop.
No, I'm just going to share the whole desktop. So
there we go.
When you click on one of them, a
There you
pop-up
go.
box will appear and give you granular control on this specific feature. You can turn it off by hitting the red button or turn it on.
Right.
You can start playing the track and listening to it. And
Yeah.
okay, stand by for 1 second.
Uh-uh.
Wow. So that's a bad thing to try, is echo while you're trying to think, because it echoes for a very long time.
Okay.
Let's try
That's
another
funny.
one. But anyway, regardless of what you're doing, let's
Popey's here, and he just commented on your panel.
my panel. What about my panel?
Well, take a look.
Oh, why? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
So,
he said me looks at that weird colored panel. He spelled colored. He spelled colored wrong too.
Okay, so that's not actually colored like that normally. It's transparent. It's colored like that because for some reason DaVinci Resolve opens full screen, or not full screen, maximized all the time. So there's no way to unmaximize it. So your panel looks like that when you have DaVinci Resolve open.
Yeah.
Sure, I could change the color. I just haven't got around to it.
I just wanted you to know he's harassing you.
It actually looks like this over here when the panel does. So anyway, a normal thing. But anyway, here you have the pop-up box and you have control over each individual thing, each individual track that you put it on. So,
and this is very consistent, like I said, with a DAW, right? So Reaper, very similar. You've got filters that every filter you're applying, and then the stack or the order that you have them in, that's the order they're being applied in. And then each one of those filters has some set of configurable options. So,
yep.
So what you're doing already is you're kind of, I mean, you're already doing the things that I wasn't sure you were doing, but it looks like you are. So,
but here's the thing, Eric. It's like now I have a multi-band, what do you call
EQ
compressor on here.
Oh, compressor. Okay.
So this is the levels that I have. So I have the compressor on there, but the question is, do I have the compressor levels correct for the track to get the right sound? And I think that's where it's lacking. It's not that I don't have the tools, or maybe I know what to put on. I just don't always know how to use it when I put it on. And that's very, I don't know, I wouldn't say dangerous is the word, but that doesn't always, equate to having good audio.
What are the drop-down options where it says default at the top? Are there any presets there?
So there are presets, and it is, I don't know if I got to turn it off to, hold on. It's not giving me the drop-down right at the moment. So.
Well, so one of the ways that I learned was in some tools where they have presets, none of the presets work perfectly, so I would still have to tweak them. But by seeing what they have set for presets, a lot of times you can kind of see, okay, well, for,
Okay, so I think if I remember correctly, the presets were not like you would see on a music app where it'd say rock, or it was
no.
It was just like 4 presets, like male voice something.
Yeah.
I think there was 2 male and 2 female type presets there.
Okay. Yeah. So Simon said multiband is a powerful tool, easy to go wrong with. I completely agree. I don't use a multiband compressor. I just use a single mono compressor because I don't really need all of that.
Well, what I ended up doing, to be honest with you, is I ended up going into Audacity and seeing what EQ I had there, and then comparing those two, between that and this, and trying to make it equal.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I'm not even sure if that is.
Well, so here's what do you know what you're doing with a multiband compressor? Do you understand what it does?
I mean, I understand what it does. I don't know exactly how to apply
because
it.
Basically what you're saying is that at each one of these frequencies, you are setting a certain level of compression, and you're being very granular about it versus like what I'm doing with it's just a simple mono compressor is all frequencies. I'm not discriminating against frequency. because EQ, to me, EQ is more where I'm going to mess with the frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I will do in a compressor with frequencies is for sibilance. There's a certain range for me specifically that I've figured out where if I have a sharp S, I can put a second compressor under my main one with just that frequency targeted, and then be able to just focus on like literally 1,000, like 100 kilohertz range, and just compress that part down. But otherwise, the granularity of doing multiband, I'm not sure you need to go down that path, and anyone's welcome to disagree with me on that. But this is a lot of complexity that maybe you just don't need. So there's another compressor in there that's much simpler.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there is in the other that I can't get to right at this moment. I'd have to restart DaVinci Resolve. I don't want to do that right now. But there are other ones that you can get to.
Go back to the edit page.
Okay.
And in that little cross, click inside of there. Just double click. Okay, that's just pan. Okay, I wasn't sure if you could get to it from there, because on my copy of DaVinci, I have on my Fairlight page a little box that looks just like that. And when I double click on it, it gives me a very simple sort of set of tools, and they're all in one panel. And it's a gate, a compressor, there's like 3 or 4 different. So I guess you're not. I haven't.
Yeah, I would. I like I said, this is the setup that I have just because I may not be the DaVinci Resolve expert, so I've only been using it for a couple months.
No, it's okay.
So this is this is my workflow at the moment. So
yeah,
if you can show me that would be great. I mean, that would be awesome.
Let's go back to the audio page and see if we can get to it from there. To Fairlight. Can I? Let me see if I can just click around.
It's very dangerous to do live on the internet, allowing somebody else to have control of your computer.
Oh, look, my cursor got gigantic and silly. I don't think I'm going to be able to point at anything because I can't. Oh, wait. Yeah, it's just really slow.
Yep.
There's got to be a way. Nope. Yeah, on mine, I have a different. It doesn't look like this. It's a slightly different view.
Well, what if we go up to the mixer and?
Oh, you're saying in here?
Yeah. That's just going to turn the mixer off and on.
Yeah, no,
I don't know where you would be. I don't know where you would be adding.
Yeah, I have to look on my copy to see. No. Oh, wait. No. Yeah, mine looks a little different than yours. And I'm not sure why. Let me get rid of that and go back to the full mixer, and maybe it'll show it. Yeah, I just have a different look.
Well, you're on the edge of the screen.
There it goes. So. Okay. So you have multi-band compressor, but not a simple one. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to show you mine. I'll take a screenshot of it so you can see what it looks like. And I'm sure there's a way for us to get the same thing. Yeah, because even this overlap here is kind of interesting.
Yeah, you got a scroll bar at the bottom for that.
Yeah. What are these? Oh, you just have a bunch of extra audio channels.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Well, I was hoping that I could just jump that one up and show you, but Anyway, from a compressor, I think you can probably limit the number of bands you have in here. Yeah, you can turn different ones off.
Yes.
And yeah. So what have you tried in here? You've just tried to do. I'll just give you.
Well, like I said, I took one track, listened to it in Audacity, listened to it in here, and then had both of them open and kind of matched up the compressor levels that I had in Audacity to the compressor levels I have in here.
Gotcha.
That's basically what I've done. And, I don't know. There are certain episodes of Linux Spotlight that sound decent to me, and there are certain episodes that sound not so decent. So, don't know
Yusuf is
where
saying
one is, what is causing one to be better than the other, but
got it. Yusuf was saying there's a way to scroll down, maybe the part I'm looking for. He says you can scroll down in the place where EQ should be. So I already disconnected. I don't know if you can try that panel, or the mixer panel, and see if there's some way to scroll down through there. Or there it is. Yes, double click in that box.
This box.
No, up. See the with the crosshair, basically X.
This.
Yeah, double click that.
That's the pan.
Are you back on edit?
No, I'm in Fairlight.
Why does it work differently for me? That's interesting. What's up?
So, like I said, this whole thing with DaVinci Resolve not working, as far as the menu there, that happens every once in a while, and that's a pain where we can't see the rest of the plugins. But
yeah, let me switch back. Let me check something if I can get to my desktop. Yes, it's the Windows sound. You can yell at me later. It's not letting me. Okay. I was going to pull up the copy I had. So
that's all right.
Okay. Well, so to be continued on that part, but this gives me sort of the groundwork that I was hoping to get. And I do think so. The thing that I think is important to know here is that you are seeing equivalent tools, like I said, that you would have in a DAW in Fairlight here in DaVinci Resolve. You're already using them, so you're using the de-esser and limiter and things like that. And really, at this point, you just want to be able to tweak them.
Yep.
You weren't sure if you were getting the same capabilities out of DaVinci as you would out of something like Reaper. You said you downloaded Reaper. If you want to install it and look at it, you're welcome to see if that's going to give you anything else. But I do still think that it's a simpler solution that we just figure out the right way to set the filters in here.
Yep. Well, I have Reaper installed, but yeah, I definitely, if I can do it with one program, I definitely want to do it with one program.
Okay. I think we can do that.
So like the noise reduction levels, basically what I know the workflow of doing the noise reduction in Audacity, but I'm not familiar with the noise reduction level in how you would do it in here. Mm-hmm. So those are the types of things that I would need to learn in order to switch completely, because the EQ and compressors is one thing. You can kind of like match those maybe, but this is a different workflow than capturing just a part of the track and then getting a level from that and then applying the noise profile. So you have total control over this noise reduction plugin, right. But I don't know exactly how to use that either.
Yeah. And so there's a couple things you would tweak with this. I'll tell you, even with Reaper, the noise reduction that's in there, I've still had better luck with Audacity's filter, especially for something that's a constant noise, like a fan or something like that you can easily isolate. It's much easier. least as far as I've gotten at this point, it's much easier to use Audacity. So my first pass of someone else's audio will usually just be open it in Audacity and find that frequency and cancel it out. The one in Reaper works, but I've had some issues with it distorting or being too heavy-handed. And it's very similar to what you showed here. I'm actually curious to try it in DaVinci to see if it's any better. But you saw, like, so if you open that back up, I mean, the controls that are there are kind of, so listen to
so you have
noise.
the same control as you do in Audacity. It's just
Right.
learning the workflow is really the main thing.
Well, one of the things that you'll want to, so it has auto speech mode, which I think is probably going to do some sort of recognition of speech versus just background noise.
Right.
And it may just magically be able to do that without much tinkering. You may have to adjust some of the leveling, but like I said, I'll have to play around with that. The other thing you can do is that check at the top right, listen to noise only. That's usually really helpful for things like de-essers or in this case, a noise cancellation, because it's going to just let you preview what it's taking out instead of you just discerning, like, how is this different with and without. You can actually have it just play the thing that it is taking out, and you can tell that it's just noise.
Right. Well, I know, like, the threshold and the attack, I know what they are, like, I know what they do, but setting them at the right level is,
well, here's the fun part.
Thing I need to learn.
Everybody's audio is different. So even if you get this all set up, you're going to have to come in and probably tweak it to some degree anyway.
Right. For
everybody's audio.
Yep.
I've been lucky because I've really only recording with Nate, and his audio is pretty consistent. And it's always the same 2 or 3 things that I have to do with either a background noise or something like that. And yeah, having a different guest every week would mean that you kind of have to tweak things a little bit.
Which means I have to know what everything does and where to set it. That's what it pretty much means. So I need to learn a lot.
Right. Well, so a couple things for, like, if you just want to talk about some of these things here. I mean, you know what threshold is, right?
I know what the threshold is. I know what the attack time is.
Okay, so the threshold is how loud does it need to be considered noise versus background noise, right? Or at what point should I start capturing? Attack is how quickly. Sensitivity is going to be how much above that does it need to be. The ratio is how much of this do you want me to apply, right? For the sensitivity, how far do you want me to push that down?
Right.
Frequency.
I'm not sure what the smoothing does. Like, I'm not sure what that's for.
I think that's because you don't want it to sound very jagged. The problem with a lot of these things is they will use different terminology.
Yep.
As you've probably noticed.
Yep.
Like, every program likes to use different terminology. So my guess with that, and again, this is me being a novice, it's probably where you don't want it to be so sharp, cutting off that one frequency that you're trying to. So it probably will look beyond just like it'll widen the band, if you will. If that makes sense. And then output, dry versus dry and wet percentage. Dry side is pre-effect, pre-filter, and wet side is post-effect and filter. So,
which means what?
So it means think about the audio coming in as being the underlying track, and the audio going out being what's coming out of this filter.
Got you.
So the dry side of it is it lets you mix back in some of the untouched audio, and a place where this actually is really helpful is like a noise gate, where sometimes if you've heard audio with a noise gate that's too harsh, where it will cut and the only thing you hear is the voice, but there's no kind of breath, there's no kind of, and it sounds weird because that's not how speech works. And that's not, there's ambient noise. There should be some amount of noise, and the dry side lets you, even with a gate that's cutting out the sound you don't want, you can introduce back a little bit of that dry side so that it will fill in the sound, so to speak. So you won't hear the heavy keyboard clacking, but you might hear a little bit of it. Or you won't hear a heavy breath, but you'll hear a little breath, that kind of thing. So that's that dry and wet is going to let you kind of fix that percentage. and
And what
level
about the
is
level?
level's just the amount that it's going to boost the output, which it's at 0 now, which is probably what you'd ever always leave it at.
Yeah. So like I said, comparing this to the noise reduction in Audacity or the actual workflow, um, basically what I do for that one is I just grab a section of silence for the noise profile and then apply that profile to the whole track.
Right. Do you see where it says learn in the middle?
Yeah.
So that's what this is going to do that as well. So Yusuf's saying that this has an AI to learn. So you could do the same thing. If you grabbed a section of audio and then used that learn, like just the quiet audio, right? Where you can capture just the fan noise or whatever.
Right.
Then it should do the same thing as Audacity.
Okay.
So that may save you the step, and that may even save me the step, but you know.
So in Audacity, there's how many things I do? I do noise reduction, EQ, compressor, noise gate in Audacity, which takes down anything under a certain frequency all the way down to minus 50 dB. And then the last thing I do is a limiter -1 so that there's no spikes or peaks in it.
Right. Yeah. And
yeah.
You don't, so everything you just said, you could probably do in here, honestly. Because if the noise reduction does work with the learn mode,
right,
then I mean that covers that, and then everything else in terms of the noise gate, the compression, the limiting, all that stuff is in here. So,
well, I definitely want to do that if I can do that, because that would save me a whole bunch of time.
Yeah. All right. Well, and we will need to do a session where I can hear your audio to be able to really, effectively help you. Because right now I can see it, but it doesn't really do anything. And I also want to look around at the UI a little more. So Yusuf was saying if we close the panel at the top, the mixing panel.
The meters?
Yeah. There we go. There's the dynamics. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Click in that box next to the dynamics underneath of the A1, A2, A3 on the right.
On the right?
On the right. Nope. So over to that mixer panel.
Yeah.
Yep. Down. See where it says dynamics?
Oh, okay. Got you.
Double click on that. Here's that more simple panel where you've got a gate, a compressor, a limiter.
Hey, that's fantastic.
Yes. This is what I knew it had to be there. We just couldn't see it. So you have the choice of either an expander or a gate, and they perform similar functions. I've had better luck with expanders. It's easier to tune them. Gates can be too aggressive sometimes, but anyway, you can.
Well, the thing I find with gates is they work great, except for in instances when you're talking and at the end of a sentence you might get lower, where it just cuts you off. So you'll be saying something and you'll be your voice will trail off, and it'll cut that last trail off.
So think back to what I was saying about the dry side. That's exactly where that dry side comes in, because I was having the same exact problem for a long time. And I'm like, there has to be a happy medium. Either you can hear every breath I take and every click I make, or you cut off those soft vowel sounds. And that's where the dry side comes back. So that last little S or F or whatever isn't getting cut, because the dry side can push some of that back into the mix. I'm not sure how much, if you can do that in here or not, but this is what I meant by a much more sort of simple. So here's your compressor, right?
Right.
Not a multi-band. You don't have all the crazy controls. You basically have, what's my threshold? What's the ratio? Attack, hold, release. Like that's, for voice, that's really...
So when we click these top buttons, it actually turns it on.
Yeah. And then you can and you see, if you play audio, you'll see it. I believe you'll see it in the box in the background. No, you won't. Okay. I thought maybe you would. So you can actually adjust it as it's playing. and change your threshold, change your ratio. You know, if any of this, and this is where you can match this up probably more closely to what you're doing in Audacity.
Right. Well, one of the downsides to DaVinci Resolve, especially specifically in Linux, I believe, I'm not sure, I never tried it on Windows, but the downside of DaVinci Resolve in Linux is it takes over that sound output, whatever you have listed. So, in order to get DaVinci Resolve working in Linux, as far as sound goes, you have to tell it in a config file what audio output you want to use. And once you do that, it takes that over anytime it's open.
Is it using ALSA? Is that why?
I believe it is.
Yeah, that's why, because it's using ALSA. Okay.
So
I wonder if you could use Jack.
You probably could, but I don't have Jack set up.
Oh, if only you
So
knew someone who could
my the reason I bring that up is because I was telling you off stream, Eric, that this headset that I'm using has two outputs, one stereo, one mono. So the only way that I'm able to hear you in Zoom is by setting the system output to the stereo and using the mono output, because that's what I set DaVinci Resolve to use. And it won't allow me to hear Zoom on the mono output because it's open and it takes control of that. The problem with that for me specifically is the output level, volume level for the mono is like ridiculously louder than the stereo. So anytime when I started playing, I can't hear nothing. It's like blaring in my ears.
yeah, okay, yeah.
So I couldn't even hear you talk. So that's the issue.
Well, we'll have to look and see if maybe Jack would make that easier for you. I don't know. I'll have to test it and play around with it. But yeah, this dynamics panel, I think, kind of gives you a lot of what you were looking for without having to deal with the individual plugins, especially the multi-level or the multi-band compressor. This compressor, I think, is probably going to be the better option for you. And then you may still want to do some EQ. But, you know, between the gate being here, the compressor being here, the limiter being here, like this is your toolkit to kind of get most of that stuff.
Well, see, it's slightly harder to learn in DaVinci Resolve because, like, for example, in Audacity, when you use the compressor and it applies that to the track, I can see the levels now through the peaks, and I can see that it's done what it's supposed to do. In here, as you were talking earlier, I guess it only does it on the output side, so it doesn't actually change the peaks in the tracks.
Right.
So I have no idea if it's the right level or not because I can't see it.
Yeah. I mean, that is just something absolutely. So the better it's a little disappointing that they don't show you a waveform in this, where it's showing you the input and the graph. In a lot of DAWs and a lot of plugins, they will show you. So like, if you want to stop sharing, I'll show just real quick on my side. All right. I have to you can't see it on your side. Let me share. If it'll let me, yes. Okay. All right. So the difference between that plugin you were just looking at, which is the gate, and this gate, is that I can see the waveform and it's showing me where the gate's hitting while I'm speaking or while I'm listening to the audio. Right. And this is an LSP plugin, but in Reaper, it's very similar. So if I just pull something up from... So
we'd like to continue.
You guys are going to hear it. Sorry, that's going to be loud. So when I pull up the filters here, and actually, let me just mute this so you guys aren't getting bombed out by that. Where is it? Okay. All right. When I play and I open one of the, for some reason it's not going to, I think it's because I turned the volume down so that they couldn't hear it. Anyway, you can actually see the meters, and I mean it's giving you a real time in display of what it's doing.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
that you
so
can
that's
actually.
definitely a not a I wouldn't say it a downside, but it makes it a harder
It's
learning
because
curve.
I was on the wrong one. Nate's doing it now. Yeah. So and so the same settings, the same everything's here, right? So we were just looking at the gate. It's all the same things, right? Your attack, your holds, your releases, all this stuff is exactly the same. And that's what I'm saying. So I think you'll probably be able to get everything you need out of DaVinci Resolve anyway. But you're welcome. I mean, as far as I'm not going to mix audio in DaVinci Resolve without video. There's no. I mean, I've heard people that do that, and that's
Right.
not maybe the worst.
It wouldn't be necessary.
Right. But so because I'm doing just audio only, like Reaper is the right tool for me. But in terms of the capabilities of the filters and things like that, like this, I think you're going to get everything you need out of DaVinci, and probably not even have to do that pre-processing in Audacity.
Well, that's the thing. If I can get what I need out of DaVinci Resolve, that's what I want to go with. If I still need to do some pre-processing, I still would like to learn something like Reaper if it's going to make that processing faster. Like having to apply all of them effects, especially
Believe it
on,
or
say,
not,
a 2-hour video.
yeah. But honestly, I don't know. I don't know that it will. I mean, I still want you to see it. I want you to learn it. You've downloaded it. Go ahead and install it. There's a couple things to set up so that it makes it easier. If your Reaper is not going to look like my Reaper, because I took some time to change. I basically stripped out all of the things that relate to music production, and the only things left are voiceover. And I followed a video series by Mike Delgadio. He has a channel called Booth Junkies.
Mm-hmm.
Booth Junkie, and he has a 5-part Reaper, turning Reaper into the ultimate voiceover machine. And so, as a starting point, when I was learning Reaper, because when you open Reaper, it is, if you think DaVinci's bad, I mean, it is just, you have no idea what you're looking at. It is so complicated. At least to me, it was. So, following that tutorial made it really simple to just kind of say, okay, let me get rid of everything I don't need and just focus on the voice stuff and use that as the starting point. And since I've watched that, I've made a bunch of other changes, but it's a really good sort of fundamentals starting place. So if you wanted to, kind of use that.
I downloaded it and it is installed now. So maybe we can take a look at that.
Okay. Oh,
we're ignoring chat again.
I know we are. It's a whole bunch of it too. Yusuf, yeah, thanks for jumping in and helping.
I think me and Yusuf need to talk about DaVinci Resolve sometime.
Obviously, he knows a lot more than I do.
He knows a lot about it, so I think I could learn something from him.
Yeah, I agree with that. Both of us.
And Electron, you said need to adjust the threshold to avoid that, and the release on the compressor. I think it was on the compressor. I think that's what we were working on at the time. Yeah. Well, again, I have to learn the whole. I have to basically relearn what I'm looking at. So
yeah,
because again, I didn't start out as a audio guy. I don't come at this from anywhere where I went to school for it, or this is my side job, or anything else. It's just the only reason I needed to learn audio was for the podcast itself and wanting to make it sound better. So there's a lot that I just picked one little piece up here and one little piece over there, and I missed all of the middle. Mm-hmm. So it's like,
well, that's the thing with the panels and I've noticed that is depending on your screen size. I was doing it on 1920, and it pushes all of that even more, and it gracefully sort of hides and folds into itself, but then you end up missing. So I knew that dynamics panel should have been there, and I knew what it looked like, but I couldn't. I was like, why isn't it? So by
Well, that's the
collapsing.
other thing about DaVinci Resolve. It allows for so much for you to view so much at one time that a lot of these things get distorted or their menus get distorted because there's so much on the screen. I was watching the tutorial videos of editing and the ways this person edits on on the Blackmagic website, and the person was constantly going into this section and saying, okay, we don't need the inspector right now, we don't need this, so we're going to simplify our workflow. And then they would do something else and they would switch and they would say, well, we need this, and now we're going to open this panel. So they were constantly revising their layout
Right.
as they were going to match what they were doing.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the cool things about Reaper. And if you watch that video series, you can actually save the full layout of the screen as a template. And if you saw when I opened Reaper, it actually asked me, what do I want to do? Open a previous project or use a template? And I have two templates. One is just solo recording, just my mic. And then I have one that's for recording my mic and the desktop. So it just adds different tracks, but you can set the track layout. You can set the filters that are on there. Like everything, you get it to where it's like the known good. And then you just say, save as template. And then the next time you come in, you just, boom, you're right back. And that's, I can't say enough good things about Reaper. I mean, honestly, I've only been using it for a few months, but in terms of a tool that you can grow into, or that will grow with you, I guess, I'm not using 99% of the stuff that's in Reaper, and I may only ever use 10% of it, but I know that if I need it, it's there.
Well, that's the same scenario that I have in DaVinci Resolve, where I said,
exactly.
I pick the previous project, open it up, save it as a new project, and I have the whole thing right there. Every setting that I did, every transition that I put in there, I have it, and I just delete out it's faster for me to delete out the parts that I don't need than to create a whole new project.
Yeah.
So yeah, and all of them audio levels are in there. Everything is basically the way I left it from the last episode.
So Simon, he makes a really good point in here where he's saying, you just have to use your ears to dial it in until you hear what you think is good. Then reference with the source you want to get close to and compare. What are the differences? And see that's where they get you though. The differences are, I don't know what frequency that is, or I don't know what effect they use to get there. But he's right. I mean, most of this, like the hardest thing that I had was the sharp S that I get sometimes. Finding that frequency, and then once I found the frequency, it was like, okay, how can I attack just that frequency? Because unfortunately, it's right in that dynamic range of the voice where if you push too far down, it starts to sound like this, and you can't be overly aggressive in that area. So I had to find literally the exact point in the frequency band and grab it. And I was doing it with EQ. And there's some things you can do, but that was being too aggressive. So that's when I figured out in Reaper, at least, you can use just another compressor and just narrow it just in that area. And that's the thing. It's hearing it, understanding what you're hearing, and then being able to, apply it. And that just comes with experience. I mean, I don't feel like I'm there yet at all. It took me forever to figure that out.
Where I am at right now is I can tell you that's good audio, and I can tell you that's bad audio. I just don't know how to get from one to the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
I will hear, like I'll hear it that it's bad. Like other people will say, "Oh, that sounds fine." And I know that it doesn't sound fine. I know that it doesn't sound fine. It's not good enough, but I don't know how to get it to that point where it is good enough. And, guys like Joe Resington, he used to always tell me, especially when I first started out. I mean, and granted, when I first started out, it was even more terrible than it is now, but he would always tell me, your audio is crap. And I mean, he was right. I mean, he wasn't trying to be a jerk about it. He was just telling me his honest opinion about the audio. And that was always in the back of my mind trying, I'd always hear Joe say that the audio is crap, I'm trying to get it better. So.
Well, I think it's an evolving process, right? I mean, I don't spend every day, all day thinking about audio, but I've tried to take steps. I would like to think my audio is better than it was, but I know it's still not as good as it could be. And, I have the interest and the desire to keep improving it. Some of it is hardware, some of it is software, some of it is how I'm capturing it, some of it's how I'm mixing it. And, and all of that takes some level of experience. You can't just watch a video. You can't just
Right.
read a tutorial. And the maddening part, the frustrating part is that everybody's voice is different and everybody's microphone is different. You sound great on an SM7B. I'm sure I would sound good too because it's a good microphone, but it may not be the best microphone for me.
Right.
And, it just is what it is, and it can be frustrating because you spend so much time and energy. And I got to that point where it was like, what am I doing wrong? Like,
Wait, do you know how many videos I watched that had the title in the best audio settings
oh yeah,
for Audacity, or the best settings for your stream, the best audio settings for your stream,
yeah.
only to watch this 15-minute video to say at the end, you have no idea what you're talking about. Or no, that's not the case. That's not the best setting because this person says this is the best setting and that person says this. I
Yeah.
wasted so much time trying to figure out where the best tutorials are and, trying to watch them, it's very frustrating to go through because all this time that you're wasting, you're still having bad audio.
Yeah. Yeah. It's frustrating because there are times. So the other thing is you can control your audio, right?
Right.
It's the position you're in that I don't envy is that you have to deal with other people's audio,
Yep.
and it really,
And that's not, and everybody's audio is different, not just their voice, but their background, their mic setup. Are they using some people use a laptop mic, and it's like, that's not going to create a great sound. I'm just saying. But I can't tell them, like when I interview somebody for Linux Spotlight, I can't say to them, you know what, that mic's not up to my audio quality standards. So we're just not going to do it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like you've got to deal with what you get. So it's never
right.
going to be a perfect sound. It never will be because it's always going to rely on that raw audio. But I want to get it to the best that I can.
Mm-hmm. I'm
And like I
showing
said,
this.
with Drew's audio track that he sent me, I know his sounded way better than mine. I just don't know what he did to it to make it sound that way.
I'm looking at this chart that Silent linked to.
Yep.
Some of these descriptive terms are very funny. The meat of the cymbal, the bark or the growl of the tenor sax, the bite. Yeah, I mean it's a funny way to explain it, but yeah. So here's been my issue. One of my biggest issues in working with vocal, just spoken word. Almost everything produced for mixing, any of this stuff we've been talking about almost always directly relates to music or sung vocals, right? Singing vocals, not just speaking in a quiet room, right? And that's been one of the most difficult things for me is to find someone. And that's why the Booth Junkie thing has been so helpful to me is because he's very focused on voiceover and stuff like that. I'm never going to mic mix or do anything with music ever. Like it's not my area of expertise or anything I have an interest in. So that's how I ended up on Reaper because I actually tried Harrison Mix Bus and Ardor and like a bunch of other different DAWs, but they all are so focused on music production that all that stuff just got in my way. And I just, I don't need it. And that's why I ended up on Reaper because Reaper is so modular that you can literally rip everything out and just leave what's relevant to spoken word. So anyway, it is a process and we will never I honestly, I think it's one of those things, if you ever feel like, oh yeah, I completely figured this out and there's nothing else for me to learn or improve on,
Right.
or if you're not critical of your own work, it's, if you don't hear the flaws, I guess part of it is not letting it drive you crazy. But, and for someone like Joe or whoever to say, and I've had a lot of people say, man, your audio is, I like the video, but God, it was hard to listen to. It's just like, ooh, that's not good.
I have had mixed reactions on the videos that I make and on Link Spotlight, and especially on Biddle. Obviously everybody's going to complain about the audio in Biddle because,
Yeah.
well, you got 30 people on one track,
Yeah.
and there's no, I don't do anything to the audio track of all you guys talking for the live stream or on YouTube. What I do try to fix up is the audio podcast release of it, where I'll take it and put it in Audacity and try to fix it up a little bit. But I mean, you can't take out the keyboards
No.
and the scratching of certain mics and people
No.
banging on desks and all that other
Not
stuff.
unless you were literally willing to go in there and just look at the waveform and do it manually.
Well, I have done that in the past. Honestly, I have done that for certain episodes, to go in there and take a 2-hour episode. You know how long it takes to take a 2-hour episode?
Yes, I do.
And manually take out all of this stuff.
Yeah.
I have done that, but no, I don't manually do that all the time. So
yeah. Well, you know what? Let's look at Reaper a little more, because Simon just said something that.
Well, I have it open, so.
Okay, you're welcome to share, or I was just going to show real quick.
No, go ahead.
So let's just open this back up. So one of the most amazing things, besides just all of this stuff being configurable and easy to sort of mix around and change, is actions. So everything that's in Reaper, everything you can do is an action. Look how tiny this little scroll chunk is here. That's how many there are. And it is truly unbelievable. They have exposed every little granular feature of this application and what it can do. And then you can just map it. And not only just map the individual ones, you create custom actions. So I have a couple custom ones where I have a decrease volume of selection, delete from time selection. And so I don't have a lot yet, but basically what you do, it did that instead of editing it. If I edit it, you have all of those same actions over here on the left, and you basically just create what are essentially macros.
Right.
And so you just say, okay, set ripple edit per track. And this is to delete a chunk of the track that I have selected. Time selection, cut it. It's basically ripple edit, unselect. So I just found the things that I wanted it to do by filtering up here. And then you just put them in here in the right order. And then each one of these potentially has their own settings that you can tweak. And so basically you can customize your workflow to such a ridiculously specific degree. And so Simon's been saying this in the chat. I think this is one of the secrets of Reaper. Like, so when I was using Ardor, they have scripting languages, and you can kind
Eric,
of do.
It says your camera's paused, so I don't think they're seeing what you're seeing.
Oh shit! Oops, poop. Not that other word.
Demonetized.
Damn. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So I'll start over with the actions then, because they missed that part. Anyway, so I'm back in Reaper. There's an actions menu, show actions list. This is everything that's in the system in terms of the granularity of the controls and things. And you can see how small the scroll piece is here, because there are literally, I don't know, thousands. And you can create your own custom actions. And so this is one where if I select a portion of the timeline and hit Shift Delete, it will clip it and ripple it together. And basically all you do is those same set of all those actions, you just bring them in, and then you are creating more or less like a visual macro builder in a way.
Right.
And so yeah, so like Simon was saying, so you do the same steps over and over, right? And you end up saying, okay, I'm going to adjust these levels, or I want to add this filter, or I want to something. You're doing something, and you tend to be repetitive about it. You think to yourself, I bet there's an action for that. There has to be, because I'm doing this thing in there. So let me just create a little custom action and then bind it to a key. And you just build and build and build. And so I can imagine he's been using this for years. I can imagine that he probably has some really, really specific, very cool, very tailored to him actions that let him do the work he does in here. And it saves him. I couldn't imagine how much time. He said something like, he can do something in 2 seconds in Reaper that would take, so much time to do manually, like a select,
Right.
some action, take, so. And he's saying you can.
Yes, my Reaper does not look like your Reaper. Just saying.
No. Well, actually, let's see yours, because the default Reaper is not at all like what mine is.
Let's see here, Reaper. All right. So
yeah,
this is this is the default Reaper with nothing in it.
Right.
So where to even start?
Right. And this is why when I first installed Reaper, I was like, this might not be for me.
Yeah. Now, I mean, you can go to the action list, like you said, and see all
Right.
of these, but like, I would have to again.
So this
learn
is
something
where
completely
I
new.
think if you watch that video series, like I said, and they're all about 15, 20 minutes long, so it's not a huge time commitment. But it will give you that foundation so that you have the tracks laid out the way you want. You have, the panels all sort of set the way. And he explains why he does it that way, so it makes sense,
Right.
as a starting point. And again, it's focused specifically on voice work, not music production. So
Yeah, because they're two different animals, dude.
yeah. But that's my suggestion: is just watch that, see what you think. Set it up. It doesn't take very long, and you'll start to see like how modular and impressive this is. And what's amazing is I'll get a 2-hour, audio file done, and then you have all of these different capabilities for exporting, and it's really fast. It's 11 megabytes to download, which
You're right.
seems impossible.
Yep.
And it runs so fast, and they still consider it to be experimental on Linux, which I mean, it's been that way for years.
Now,
so
does it have like tons of different plugins or what?
Well, so it comes with the REA plugin set, which is it's a pretty complete set of different plugins, but you can also use any of the VST or LSP plugins. You just install them and tell them where it is, and then you'll have a good base set, and then you have the ability to add in additional plugins. I tend to just use theirs because they're pretty good quality, and then they're consistent as well. Sometimes you'll get a plugin that has its own UI or gets kind of a little weird.
Gets a little weird, yeah.
Yeah. So it takes some time to play around with. And the other thing with Reaper is there's usually 5 ways to do the same thing. So depending on which tutorial or video you watch.
So what you're saying is it's the KDE of audio editing tools.
It can be, but you're going to find the thing that makes sense to you. So there's a plugin or a filter that lets you do. So I'll show you the noise cancellation. Just stop closing it now. All right. So one of the Cocos, or however you say that, these are all the REA plugins. Those are their plugins. And so if I look at my track, I've got a gate, an EQ, which I actually had off for some reason. The initial compressor, which is really just more, the compressor to me it's just to bring up the low parts and to stop the high parts from, you see I don't have a limiter, and
Right.
that's what the compressor is doing for me, is it's basically stopping it's, I already have my mic set, so I'm not going to clip, so I don't really need a limiter. It's more that if I have a loud part, I want that to be equal with the soft part, and that's what the compressor is doing for me. But this compressor is very specifically focused on the sibilant part, that sharp S sound. And so it's a little bit lower in the threshold. It's a little more aggressive in the reduction. And it also has no attack. It kicks immediately. Whereas with this, I've got some attack. And so you can layer these and do different things to achieve different results, but it takes some time to play with and figure out. Now, I could achieve that same effect. There's this X comp, which has a male de-esser.
Yep.
But I could not get a good result out of it. I'm sure it works.
I couldn't get it out of the same DaVinci Resolve, voices that they gave. It just didn't seem to do what it was saying it was going to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know, I'm sure this works, but I've tried for hours to get it to work. And I mean, it's pretty straightforward to understand what it's doing. It's got different levels of, it's looking at this as being the range that it's trying to compress. So you basically go there, you can set the frequency, you can change the threshold. I mean, I know what it all does. I just can't get the sound to be right. And then I tried EQ. There's like I said, 5 different ways that I know of to do that. And then the best one I landed on was a second compressor just focused on that area. And to my ear, it makes an enormous difference having that on versus off. So I don't even necessarily need to see a waveform change. I can just hear it. It's that noticeable. I agree that some things it is to see visually, to see that difference in the waveform. And yeah, in here, you're never going to see.
Well, I think in certain instances, it's okay not to see the waveform. But in other instances, for me especially, and maybe that's because I'm not an audio geek, but this compressor specifically is something that I would like to see the audio waveform. So I know that it actually, like, if you look at my raw audio track, just recorded out of OBS, and you take that track, it is so up and down. Maybe it's just the way I talk. Sometimes I'm louder than others, and sometimes I trail off, or whatever it may be. But either way, if you look at my audio track, it is just a mess, for lack of a better term, as far as peaks and stuff.
Right.
So when I apply the compressor, I can see that it's done. And there's times where I've actually applied the compressor twice in Audacity in order to get the levels the way they should be. But
so Audacity, I know it's a compressor, but my experience is the compressor in Audacity does things that does not correspond with what everything else calls a compressor. Could be the way I'm using it, but when I started using these tools, what I had been using a compressor for in Audacity was not what you use a compressor for. It's basically what I figured out. It was like, I thought I was using it to sort of push I thought I understood what I was doing with it.
Well, the way I understand a compressor is to level out the levels of the track. So like the low levels come up and the high levels come down to meet in the middle. So you have one kind of not flat waveform, but like more level.
It was less about my understanding of the concept and more about how Audacity was actually affecting the audio. The result of running the compressor in Audacity was not the same result I would get if I used a compressor in another piece of software, is I guess the best way to say it. So, and I don't know why that is, if I was just doing something wrong, but, and again, because of the destructive or all at once sort of nature of Audacity, what I'm showing here, like being able to tweak all these things and what we looked at in DaVinci Resolve, that's kind of impossible to do because it's just going to take forever. And it does take forever. And heaven forbid you ever reinstall and forget what your filter settings were in
Yep.
Audacity, because you're going to be in big trouble.
Well, like I said to you before, I would like it. I would like to somehow save that time that it takes to apply all of those effects. So, like, it takes a good 5 minutes sometimes
mhm,
to apply an effect on a 2-hour video in Audacity. So it's like, if I could
yeah,
save that time and apply those effects randomly and not take 5 minutes for each one, that would be great.
yeah. So Simon's saying that it's very common to do multiple compressor stages with vocals, because if you try to get all the sound you're looking for out of a single compressor, sometimes you're going to be too heavy with it.
So in that, let me ask you, if you apply a compressor for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
now when you go to apply it again, do you apply the same levels, the
No,
same
because
attack levels,
this
or
is
what?
this is, well, so it depends on what you're compressing. So to his point, if you look at my example here, I've got just one single compressor that I'm literally the low pass and high pass. It's at the both ends of the scale, so there's no focus to it. It has nothing to do with the frequencies and everything to do with the volume,
Mhm.
right? And all I'm doing is the things I'm tuning are just the attack and the release and the, like, how aggressive the compressor is and when it kicks in. I'm not focused on any of the frequencies, but that what he's saying is, and what I'm doing with the sibilant part, the de-esser, is that I'm actually coming in with a second compressor that is now, if you see down here, the high pass starts at 6,500. So everything between 6,500 and 20,000, which is the way upper end of my vocal range, at least, it will look for anything that is at this threshold, and then without any kind of delay, it just slams it. It kills it.
Well, the only reason that I even thought about applying a second compressor or a second time is because way back, I don't know, one of the episodes of Bad Voltage, John O'Bacon talked about how he edits the podcast, and he went through what he does in Audacity, and he talked about applying the compressor, and then at the end he says, and then I put it through the compressor again to level out the levels even more, and that's where I first heard it from, and then I don't use it that often, and again, I'm using it as a second time through the compressor, so I don't even know if I'm doing that right, whether or not I should use the same levels. Like, there'll be times where like the one audio track I did the compressor, and it just didn't level it out to the way I wanted it to, and so I put it through the compressor again, but I took I forget which one it was, the attack or one of them levels I took down so that it wouldn't
Mm.
apply it so much, and then it came out right. But again, I don't know if that was the right
The
way to
the
go
difference
about it,
between
or
well, the difference between doing it in Audacity and doing it here is that, again, if let's say you already put the compressor in, and now you're working on a second compressor in Audacity, you're working off of that compressed audio.
right.
So you've already changed it, and you're changing it even more. If you want to go back and change that first compressor setting, you have to undo everything up to that point. And so in here, or in DaVinci Resolve, you can apply these things and do that in a way where you can turn them off and on. You can
Yes.
adjust them. So if I realize that this compressor is too aggressive, then I can just turn it down, or I can even just turn it off. And so the ability, so you were saying you rely so much on the waveform, and that's really coming from that use of Audacity and using that waveform as your guide for how much you just changed the audio.
Yes.
You're not using your ears, you're using your eyes for that. And I think, unfortunately, that's probably not the best way to get the result you're looking for. Whereas with this, yes, you don't see the waveform change, but you hear it, and you can hear it immediately because you don't have to wait for the processing to take place. Like I said, I will take, a section of audio that is particularly sharp on an S or something, and you
Right.
can do this repeat function, and it'll literally just play this section over and over and over. And then I can come into my filters and sit here and look at this and go, well, maybe this isn't the right frequency. And then maybe this isn't the right level, or maybe the attack's wrong, or anything like, and I can literally just be tweaking it as I go. Yes, I don't see it visually, but I can hear it. And
Well, let me ask you, when you apply these in Reaper specifically, when you're applying that compression, is it applying it to both tracks or is it just one?
well, let me tell you, you can do it per track. You can do it per section. So see this little chunk here. I can actually, on this chunk, I have effects. So just this one piece of audio, I can put any of these filters on.
So you
For
can
the whole
have
track,
a
I could
different
put a filter
compression
on.
for
Yeah.
the guest than for me.
Oh, I do. I absolutely do. So for Nate, the only thing I have on Nate is a Nate gate. And and even that is just, it's really more, again, because I don't have so the two for him that is a gate, which I don't even really need because his audio is already gated. So I usually will not have that on, and I have it set very high. So it's only going to gate the quietest sounds. And then the compressor is really just because I'm not using a limiter. If he has a loud part of his audio or a quiet part, I still want to be able to compress that and sort of normalize it. And so his settings, you see, I don't have the extra compressor for him, right? So each track has its own. Each little section, each little clip can have its own. The master channel can have its own. So you see down here, I've got, each track that is represented in two different ways. But yeah,
Can you go back to the box you had open?
The effects.
Yeah. So you said on his you have the gate on, but it's really low, right? And
Yeah.
I'm looking at that, and you have that set to what?
About 28.
Minus 28, right?
Yeah,
So
for me.
when I use the noise gate in Audacity, and I actually use it on every episode, I have to put it at like minus 39 in order to not clip out the voices.
Yeah. Well, but see what I do here is I have my gate at around 30. It depends.
Mm-hmm.
When I moved, so I had been out in the larger room, I had to have a different gate setting than I do now in here. When I had a different microphone, I had to have a different gate setting than I do now because I have a different microphone. Every little thing makes a difference in the gate and what you have to do to it. And your guest's audio, yeah, absolutely. But here's where that dry side comes in. Remember me telling you about how I can bring back, if I don't have dry side on and I have the gate set here, you will lose those soft consonants.
Right.
You'll lose the Fs, the trailing, the quiet parts. So I have to introduce a little more of that dry side back in so that you don't lose it all. So I don't want to hear heavy breaths.
Right.
And I don't want to hear lots of background noise, but I want to still hear the breath because otherwise it sounds robotic and weird. And so that's where that dry side, bringing in about 20, 18 or 20 back from. So it's going to cut any of the really egregious, annoying sounds based on the attacks, the holds, all that stuff. But the dry is just, this doesn't do anything with the dry. Dry is just pushing its way through no matter what.
And that's what Audacity doesn't have.
Yeah.
Like that whole dry, it doesn't have that. So it just does the attack on it. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot to learn, dude.
And it is. And I when I first opened this and I went, oh boy. Okay. All right. I've got pre-open, attack, hold, release. What's our station? What? Like, what is this? And, and I'm just like, I don't know what any of this is. And, fortunately, Reaper has been out there long enough. And there are a lot of people who use it that are not just hacks like I am. who are like making actual music and actual, you know, voiceover and stuff like that, that people have made tons of tutorials. Reaper Mania is a channel you should probably check out.
Well, I know on the Reaper site they have a guy goes through the tutorial video tutorials of showing you what Reaper is
Yeah.
and how to set it up and everything. So I'd watched I think 2 of them already. I'll be going through like more of them to see how to actually set it up.
Yeah. And again, I think a lot of this you can achieve in DaVinci Resolve, and I'm curious to see like how, because I do think holistically end-to-end workflow, if you can achieve the audio results you're looking for in DaVinci, it's probably going to make your life easier
Yep.
than having to deal with this, because really at that point, all you'd be doing is replacing Audacity with Reaper. And yes, Reaper is much more capable and you can do a lot of things you can't do with Audacity as easily, but you're still,
I'm still doing an extra step.
Right. So you've seen, you know, I don't have a tremendous amount of stuff in here. I've got a gate, an EQ, and a couple compressors based off of what I'm doing. And you could absolutely do those things in DaVinci. And that dynamics panel, you know, I think you should start there and maybe try some of that stuff out, see what the gate sounds like there. I mean, you see it's very comparable settings.
All right. So can I ask you for your help?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm trying to cut out steps. I'm trying to cut out down the workflow. You had asked me the other day, what do you think about your workflow or whatever? I record in OBS. So I record the video, and again, it comes out with 3 tracks. The problem is right now, and I haven't wanted to mess with it because every time I mess with it, I mess something up.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to mess with it, especially with interviews. I don't want to mess anybody's interview up.
Right.
But I'm recording through OBS, and it pops out a .mov file. It's about 40 gigabytes for each episode. If I put it into DaVinci Resolve, it does not show any audio tracks. I take that .mov file and I process that through FFmpeg.
Right.
This comes out pretty much the same size, and it's a .mov file, and I put it into DaVinci Resolve, and it shows the audio tracks. So my question is, or the help I'm asking for is, I would love to figure out what setting is
in OBS
going wrong in OBS that is not allowing that, because it never, okay, so it didn't always happen that way. I was using OBS and I was popping out the video file and I put it into DaVinci Resolve and it was fine. And then all of a sudden one day it just stopped working. I'm like, where's the audio track? And I was
were you nuts. You're still on Pop OS? And
yeah, like that didn't change.
Yeah.
Nothing really major changed that I can think of.
Okay. Well, yeah, there must have been some sort of update or something happened. Did you update OBS at all? Or?
Probably. I mean, I'm using the Snap version, so it definitely.
Okay. But you haven't updated DaVinci, right? I mean, you're still using 16.5 or whatever it is.
I'm using the latest one, so there may have been an update that I updated in there.
Just curious. I mean, so if it worked at one point and then didn't work, it makes me wonder. I'm hesitant to mess around with OBS right now because I'm sure it'll kill the stream.
Don't. I'm not asking for it right now. I'm saying at some point I would like to do that because that is also an extra step that I have to use FFmpeg to just basically recreate the same video that OBS just created.
Got it. So. Okay. Well, yeah, I think that would be, so the follow-up to this then, you guys may have noticed it's called Audio Adventures, plural. That we weren't going to solve the world's problems here today. This was us just sort of getting together, and I want to learn together. So Rocco's been doing a lot more on the video side with DaVinci than I have, and he's obviously, well into that. So it sounds like Yusuf's got a lot of knowledge that hopefully we can pick his brain. And Simon certainly is been using Reaper for quite a long time. So if we get on that path, but this is really just our first blush at this, and yeah, I mean, I agree. What are the pain points in your workflow, and like what can we look at to not have to go through these long steps of, you know, okay, you recorded it and now you have to spend however long. I mean, I'm sure that file takes a long time to chew through with FFmpeg.
It does. I mean, it
Yeah.
takes an extra whatever, I don't know, probably half hour
Yeah.
to go through that again and to redo it. So it's like if I could save that time, man, that saves me so much, you know. And
Right.
so you just
Right.
need to do the title and just add audio video adventures, and we're good.
Or just adventures in general. That's
Right.
all.
Right.
So you get to watch us two muddle through this, and you can yell at us in comments. And hopefully, we'll be lucky to have Simon and Yusuf here every time, so they can guide us. But no, this is great. I really think that that we have everything we need. Right. I don't think this is a question of, well, the equipment's not good enough, or we don't have the right software, or the, you know, it's more about, okay, if it's an issue with that MOV file, like, okay, can we fix that? Or if it's, can we do these things in DaVinci Resolve, or do you need Reaper? Do you need something else? I mean,
Right.
you may want Reaper just to play with it because it's a really cool tool.
I do want to learn Reaper just to learn it. So
yeah. So yeah, check out that video series. Like I said, I'll put a link in the description for the video for Mike Delgadio's channel. He's just a super cool guy anyway. Like, he does mic reviews and booth stuff, and you know,
got a great voice.
Yeah, he's just such a warm, charismatic person. Like, he makes me smile when I watch his videos. A lot like you, Rocco. So there you go. So yeah. So I'll put a link to that if you have an interest in the Reaper specific stuff. So he does, like I said, it's just specific to voiceover, and it helped me quite a lot just to get started in Reaper.
Yep.
And then, yeah, I think you and I just should look at DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to do some more testing. Like I said, I want to try doing a video with no processing at all on the audio and see if I can get a similar quality that I can get in Reaper out of DaVinci, you know, just using their set of filters. And I think once I have a chance to kick through that a little more, then you and I can come back together, and probably I can help you a little bit on that. So this episode, you're just going to have to suffer through having your guest will have better audio than you will. You're just going to have to suffer through that.
I do want to thank everybody in chat, Simon and Yusuf. Awesome comments, awesome stuff. I do want to learn more. And Simon, I said in the chat, I'm going to go back and watch this video again and write down all the comments that he made so I can remember what they are. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, if you watch the stream, you will get a lot out of the chat. We ignored the chat quite a bit today just because we were engrossed in what we were doing. But yeah, between Simon and Yusuf and Silent Robot and there were some very knowledgeable people laying down the knowledge in the chat, and we were ignoring them. So go back and check out the chat. And you know, thanks everyone for checking in today. And we'll be doing this again, hopefully not too long from now.
Very nice, awesome. Thank you.
All right, Rocco. Thank you for doing this with me. Appreciate it.
Yep, it was a pleasure, dude.
All right, and I will see all of you again soon.